Hello, I'm Joshua Farnsworth. Welcome to my woodworking school here in Earlysville, Virginia. In this video, I'm going to show you how to lay out the tails of dovetails perfectly spaced out like this, just using a handful of really inexpensive tools. So let's get started. All right, so I'm going to show you how to lay out the tails of the dovetail board. And like I said, you don't need to have a lot of really expensive tools to do this with. I'm going to share a few tools with you that you can buy for pretty reasonable prices. And I'll share the links to these tools in the video below, or in the description section below the video. The first one is you need a 6-inch combination square or some kind of square. This one is one we use in our school, and I bought a bunch of these, and they're only about, I think, under $10. And the next tool that I use is a pair of dividers. Now these dividers are very similar to some antique dividers I have. They're not quite as good, but they work perfectly fine, and once you sharpen them up, you can't beat it for like $7, $8 or something like that. So we use these in my school as well. Super inexpensive. And then this is a really nice marking gauge. It's similar to some other really expensive ones, but this one is about $20, $25. And it's got 2 locking screws here, so it gives you a nice tight lock on your marking gauge. It's got a little cutting wheel right here, so you can see. And then I use a sliding bevel square or sliding T-bevel that can be purchased either used, vintage, or I'll share a link to some good new ones that I've used. And lastly, I like to use a pencil for my layouts, and I like to use the 0.5 lead. So let's get started laying out the tails of the board, which then can be transferred onto the pin board. So just one little word about dovetails is you really don't have to lay out your tails with tools like this. I know some woodworkers who just lay it out by eye and just start cutting. But I kind of like the uniformity, and especially on larger boards. The larger the board, the more the tools are going to help you lay out perfectly spaced tails. So let's get started. So the first thing I always do is I always set the gauge to the thickness of the board plus just a hair over. And this allows the pins, when the dovetails are put together, to protrude a little bit rather than being short, so you would have to go back and plane the whole box or whatever you are building. And then I will go and I'll run this cutting line all around all the sides of my board. And I'm not going to do the back since this is just a demo. So the next step is to just take your combination square and measure about half the thickness of the board. This is not a hard and fast rule. And then I just come over here and set it there, and I just make a little tick mark there and on this side, and that just is going to tell me where the half pins go. And then I'm going to put my pencil on that line, slide the square up to it, and scribe. And I'm putting all my markings from this side. I'm going to do it over here as well, but I'm going to flip this around just for you to be able to see what I'm doing a little bit better. But normally I would measure them all from the front. Okay. Those are going to be the half pins of the tail board. Now, what I want to do, and this can be a little tricky, but I'm going to simplify it for you. So I've got to decide how many tails I want in here. So I'm going to say maybe I'll do, just kind of for illustration, I'm going to do 5. So I'm going to stick the tip of these dividers right in that line I created, and I'm not going to push down. and I'm going to step off and see if I get 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, that's way too much. So I'm going to tighten it down. Now the more tails you have on a board, the more these adjustments will make a big difference because they'll multiply every time you take a step. But 5 isn't too much. So I'm going to try it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh my goodness, that's so close. So I'm going to open them up just a hair and see what it's going to do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, it's just a little far over. So what I want to do now is, however far past that line I go with that last step, that's the little space I'm going to have on all these little spaces between the tails. So I might do a hair more. So let me open this up just a hair. When I have students do this, usually it's a little easier for them to have a little bit wider pins. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that distance right there, I think that's pretty good. So now we're going to start pushing them in. So I don't push in there, but I'm going to push here. You can see the tick marks. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to darken these so you can see them. Put a little line on those. And then I'm going to come from the other side. I'm not going to go from where that was, but I'm going to put the dividers right on that line. And I'm going to come back from the other way. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. So now I'm going to come from the back so you can see, and I'm going to stick my pencil right in each of those holes, and I'm going to draw a scribe line, perfectly square line across. Now make sure you keep the blade of the square flat to the top and the fence of the square flat to the back here. And I'm just going to go and do this on each one of these. This is the bad thing about this small thin pencil, is it snaps off, but it gives me a really nice fine line. Okay, and I never do something like this with the square hanging off the edge because it doesn't give me enough stability. So I'm going to switch it over here and stick the pencil in the hole. There we go. Now I'm also going to darken this cutting gauge line that I did earlier so that you can see a little bit better. And now I'm going to draw the angles. So what angle is the best for dovetails? 7 degrees, 8 degrees, 10 degrees, 14 degrees. Throw all that out the window. I don't really like it when people give these absolute rules because I've seen a lot of antique furniture and some have really wide angle tails and some have really narrow, and most of them are holding together after all these years. I would say don't do it so close to vertical because that'll give you a box joint and it can split the grain, but just find a picture of a dovetail on the computer that you like the look of, or on a piece of furniture. Like I just took this and set an angle from the tool tray of this workbench because I like it, the angle of that. And it doesn't matter what the degree is. Just doesn't matter whether you're hardwood or softwood. Just do what looks good, and it'll be fine. So we're going to start here. Make sure you put the pencil right on your line and then draw it down. And I go past a little bit because when I'm sawing the dovetails, it gives me, if I have a long line there, it gives me a little bit of a guide for keeping my saw straight. And I'm going to do all the ones at this angle first. Going across. And then flip it over and come back the other way. And again, keep this blade flat here and the bottom of the fence, keep it flat against the top there. And you may not be able to see all of these, but I'm going to do my best. Whoop. The more careful you are at layout, the much better your dovetails will look. Let's see if I can, there we go, that's a better view. And sometimes, even if you don't usually need reading glasses for reading, they might be helpful to pick up a cheap pair at the dollar store to help you make sure you can get these lines precise. So then I mark my waist, and that's where I cut. So that is perfectly 5 dovetails laid out right on your board, ready for cutting. So if you like this video, please subscribe below and like the video, and check out a lot of other free tutorials and buyer's guides for tools at woodandshop.com. This is Joshua Farnsworth. If you're interested in learning traditional woodworking with hand tools, visit my website at woodandshop.com, where you can find free video tutorials, workshop tours of amazing traditional woodworkers, and tool buying guides. You can ask questions and share your projects with thousands of woodworkers on my free traditional woodworking forum. Make sure you subscribe to my regular blog posts, and also check out my 10 steps for getting started in traditional woodworking. Enjoy!